My daughter gave me a pair of wireless earbuds for my 63rd birthday. I took them to work to show a few former co-workers. An old friend of mine, a retired military man, picked them up, studied them closely, and suddenly went pale. "You need to call the police," he whispered. "These aren't normal." I didn't believe him. I brushed it off. She was my daughter after all. But 3 days later, when I finally understood what she had been doing, I realized that birthday present was never a gift in the first place. Hello, friends, and thank you for joining us today. If this story resonates with you, please like the video and subscribe to stay connected with more real-life inspired stories. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We truly love hearing from our community. Just a quick note before we continue. While certain details have been adjusted for storytelling, the warnings and lessons you'll hear are very real. Any resemblance to actual people or locations is purely coincidental. I turned 63 on a Tuesday in February, and the only person who remembered was the one trying to undo my life, though I didn't know that yet. That morning began the same way my mornings had for the past 6 years, alone in a house that felt far too large for one person. The coffee maker sputtered to life at 6:30 as I shuffled into the kitchen wearing my old Postal Service sweatshirt, the logo barely visible now. Outside, the morning air was cold and gray. My phone sat quietly on the counter. No calls, no messages. At a certain age, birthdays stop being events. You're just another year older, and most people don't rush to remind you. Around 9, I heard the mail truck pass by, and a moment later, the carrier dropped something heavy onto the porch. I opened the door and found a box with my name printed neatly across the label. The return address read, Amanda Parker, Charlotte, North Carolina. My daughter. I brought the box inside and placed it on the kitchen table. Amanda and I weren't distant exactly. We spoke regularly and saw each other on holidays, but things had changed after her mother passed 6 years earlier. It was like we'd lost the one person who knew how to interpret both of us. I loved her more than anything, yet somehow we'd become polite strangers tied together by history and a shared last name. Inside the box, wrapped carefully in bubble wrap, was a pair of sleek white wireless earbuds, the kind I'd never buy for myself. There was a handwritten note, too, written in Amanda's tidy script. "Dad, thought these might make your days a little easier. No more tangled cords. Happy birthday. Love, Amanda." I lowered myself into the kitchen chair, feeling something loosen in my chest. She remembered. Of everyone, my daughter remembered. For a brief moment, I wasn't sitting in that quiet kitchen anymore. I was back in our old driveway. Amanda was about 7, wobbling on her first bike without training wheels. "Dad, I'm going to fall!" she'd shouted, fear thick in her voice. I ran beside her, one hand steadying the seat. "I've got you, sweetheart. I won't let you fall." She pedaled faster, found her balance, and I let go without telling her. 10 feet, then 20. She glanced back, laughing. "I did it, Dad. I did it." She circled back, breathless and smiling. "I trust you. You won't let me fall." My wife stood on the porch watching, healthy then, smiling proudly. Then the memory faded, and I was back in the kitchen with cold coffee and an empty house, earbuds resting in my hand, bringing a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. I charged them that afternoon. The next day, I planned to stop by the distribution center where I used to work, say hello to a few familiar faces, maybe show off my birthday gift. That night, I set the charging case on my nightstand and watched the small green light blink. Just plastic and circuitry, nothing special, yet it felt like a connection to someone I missed deeply. I had no idea I'd placed a listening device beside my bed. Daniel Reeves had served 2 tours overseas working in military signal intelligence. So when he picked up those earbuds the following morning, his reaction stopped me cold. I'd driven over to the center around 10, same as most Wednesdays. Even after retirement, I missed the rhythm of the place, the hum of machinery, the smell of cardboard and diesel, the familiar banter over terrible coffee. Daniel was on his break when I walked into the room. Mark and Lewis were there too, halfway through their lunches. "Take a look at these," I said, pulling the earbuds from my pocket. "Birthday gift from my daughter." Mark grinned. "Look at you, keeping up with the times. What's next? A smartwatch?" "Let's not get carried away," I said, smiling. It felt good, having something to show, something that meant I hadn't been forgotten. Daniel set his coffee down. "Can I see those?" His tone made me hesitate, but I handed them over. He was a quiet man, always had been. 15 years working alongside him had taught me that when he spoke carefully, there was a reason. He turned the earbuds over slowly, inspecting them like he was searching for something hidden. Then he opened the case and examined the inside. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might be ill. "You okay?" I asked. He looked at me with an expression I recognized, the same one I'd seen years ago when he told us about an explosive device his convoy barely avoided overseas. "Where did you get these?" he asked evenly. "My daughter," I replied, forcing a laugh. "Birthday present. What, you think they're dangerous or something, Thomas?" He didn't smile. "These have been altered. This isn't standard hardware." The room went silent. Mark and Lewis stopped chewing. "Altered how?" I asked, though part of me didn't want the answer. Daniel placed the earbuds on the table carefully. "I worked with surveillance and communications equipment. I know what modified electronics look like. Someone's been inside these." My stomach dropped. "You're saying—" "I'm saying these aren't just earbuds anymore." He looked at me with something close to sympathy. "You need to take these to the police now." I heard the defensiveness rise in my own voice. "Daniel, my daughter gave these to me." "I'm not saying anything about her," he replied gently. "I'm saying someone modified these for monitoring. Maybe it's a manufacturing issue, maybe not. Either way, this isn't something you ignore." "He's right," Mark added quietly. "If Daniel says something's off, it's off." I looked down at the earbuds. They looked exactly the same as before. Small, clean, innocent. Daniel had never misled me once in 15 years. "All right," I said finally. "I'll get them checked." He nodded. "Today, don't wait." I drove to the local police station during lunch, telling myself this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Daniel was seeing problems that weren't there. Maybe I was letting paranoia take over. I wasn't. The detective was direct. "Mr. Parker, these are not standard earbuds. They're part of a surveillance setup." Detective Alvarez was in his mid-50s, gray at his temples, with a steady voice shaped by years of delivering hard truths. His office was cramped, stacked with folders. I sat across from him with the earbuds placed between us and explained everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he carefully picked them up. "I'll have our tech specialist examine them. It won't take long." I sat alone for nearly 20 minutes, still hoping this would all turn out to be nothing. When the door opened again, he returned with a younger technician carrying a laptop. The look on the technician's face told me everything. "They've been modified," he said. "Audio capture, location tracking, remote activation. Someone could hear everything within range. They could track where I went, when I was home, when I wasn't." The room seemed to tilt, and I gripped the chair arms, my voice coming out rough as I asked if that meant everything I said. Detective Alvarez nodded calmly and told me yes, every conversation, every call, every word spoken while I wore them. My mind jumped to the night before, me talking to myself in the kitchen, all those small private thoughts a man has when he believes he's alone. I looked at Alvarez and said my daughter had given them to me, asking if he thought she was involved. He shook his head slightly and told me not to confront her, not yet. If I did, she'd deny it, get angry, and whatever she was planning would disappear underground where they'd never see it. He leaned forward and explained that right now she didn't know I knew, and that was the advantage. I was supposed to act normal, wear the earbuds, talk, live my life, and watch how she reacted. They needed evidence, needed to understand what the end goal was. My hands were shaking as he said people don't do this out of curiosity, that there was always something bigger behind it. Money, property, access. He said they'd figure it out, but they needed my help. I thought about Amanda, about her mother being gone for 6 years, about the little girl on the bicycle, and finally, I agreed. Alvarez slid the earbuds back to me and told me to take them home, charge them, wear them the next day, and call if anything happened. They felt wrong in my pocket, like they carried something dirty. That night, I left them on the kitchen counter and stared at them for nearly an hour. Small, white, harmless looking, except they weren't harmless at all. They were a weapon I'd welcomed into my home. The coffee maker hummed, the refrigerator clicked, ordinary sounds in a house that suddenly felt unfamiliar. I thought about Amanda's note, the line about making my days easier, and sitting alone in that kitchen, I made a decision. If my daughter wanted to listen, I'd give her something to hear. I'd play along, feed her exactly what she was looking for, and watch carefully how she moved. That decision ended up saving my life. Thursday morning, I put the earbuds in and started talking out loud like a man who'd forgotten he wasn't alone. They fit comfortably, which somehow made it worse. I moved through the kitchen making coffee and let my thoughts spill, mentioning out loud that I might sell the rental property my wife Karen had left me, that the market was good and maybe it was time. I added that I should probably update my will too, estate planning, getting to that age. The words tasted bitter, not because they were false, but because I was saying them for someone listening in secret. I went through the rest of my morning, reading the paper, fixing a loose cabinet hinge, doing normal things while feeling those earbuds like insects under my skin. Just before noon, my phone buzzed. Amanda. She casually asked if I was thinking about selling the rental and said we should talk about estate planning. My hands went cold. I'd said those exact words 3 hours earlier, alone. It was too fast, too precise. I replied that I was still thinking about it, and immediately the typing dots appeared. She offered to help, said those things could get complicated, ended with, "Love you." I set the phone down, knowing everything had changed. Around 6 that evening, the doorbell rang and Amanda was standing on my porch with takeout bags from a barbecue place, smiling like it was the most natural thing in the world. She said she'd been nearby and thought she'd bring dinner. She hadn't shown up unannounced in over a year. We ate at the kitchen table while she asked about my day, my sleep, the guys from work, harmless questions with hooks hidden in them. She asked how I was feeling lately, mentioned I'd sounded tired on the phone, talked about health and finances, said it was what her mom would have wanted. Then she casually mentioned that I'd forgotten to call her back earlier in the week, even though I hadn't forgotten anything and had never promised to call. She said it like a fact, like my memory was already slipping. I saw it clearly then. She wasn't just listening, she was building a case, shaping a version of me that seemed forgetful, dependent, incapable. I played along, admitted I'd been a little foggy lately, and her smile widened just slightly as she said that was okay, that she was there for me. After she left, I checked the locks once, then again because I wasn't sure. I stood there realizing I was locking my doors against my own daughter. I looked at the earbuds in their charging case and understood that she was listening, watching, and already several steps ahead. By Saturday afternoon, I'd spent 2 more days feeding Amanda lies through those earbuds, and then I found the truth in the last place you'd expect, a folder in my basement filing cabinet labeled under H for home maintenance. On Friday, I'd pretended to forget paying the electric bill, and within hours, she'd texted offering to set up automatic payments. Saturday morning, I lied about feeling dizzy getting out of the car, and by noon she called, worried about my health. Each time I spoke into the empty kitchen, she responded like clockwork. That morning, I even said maybe I did need someone to help manage things, the words making me feel sick. Later that day, the furnace actually started acting up, so I went down to the basement for the warranty papers. I opened the old gray filing cabinet, digging past insurance documents and ancient manuals until I found a folder that didn't belong, too clean, too new. I opened it on top of the cabinet and felt the basement go cold. Guardianship petition templates, professional headers, legal language, and my name printed clearly, Mitchell James Parker, declared incapacitated and in need of a guardian. I stopped breathing. Notes filled the margins in Amanda's neat handwriting, documenting forgotten appointments, confusion about finances, carefully constructing a version of me that justified everything she was doing. Bank statements, claims of dizziness, a doctor as a witness, increased visits, drafts for power of attorney, capacity evaluation forms, a complete checklist outlining how to legally declare your own father incompetent and take control of everything while he was still alive. I sank down onto the basement steps as the folders slipped from my hands, papers scattering across the concrete floor. And suddenly, I wasn't in the basement anymore. I was back in our driveway on a quiet Sunday morning. Amanda was 8, riding her first real bicycle without training wheels, knuckles white on the handlebars. "Dad, I'm going to fall," she cried. I ran beside her with one hand steadying the seat. "I've got you, sweetheart. I won't let you fall." She pedaled harder, found her balance, and I let go. 10 feet, 20, 30. When she realized I wasn't holding on anymore, she looked back and laughed. I did it, Dad. I did it. She circled back and wrapped her arms around me. I trust you. You won't let me fall. Karen stood on the porch in her yellow sundress, holding the camera, smiling as she captured the moment. Perfect shot. Amanda looked up at me with that gap-toothed grin and eyes full of faith. You'll always catch me, right? Always, I promised. I came back to myself on those cold basement steps, the furnace humming, the house creaking around me, alone with paperwork designed to erase me. That little girl who trusted me wanted to strip away my right to speak for myself, to choose where I lived, what I did with my money, whether I could drive or even sign my own name. This wasn't about stealing possessions. It was about stealing my personhood. I gathered the papers with shaking hands, climbed the basement steps, and carried my daughter's plan to make me disappear. This wasn't just surveillance anymore, and it wasn't just money. This was identity theft in its purest form, taking a life without laying a hand on it. The call I made Monday morning to update my mailing address should have taken 3 minutes. Instead, it took 3 minutes to realize parts of my life were already being rewritten. But the warning signs had started earlier. Sunday, I'd gone to First Union Bank on South Tryon, the same branch I'd used for 30 years. Just a routine visit, deposit a check, ask about interest rates. Jordan, the loan officer, was young and friendly, always asking how retirement was treating me. When I mentioned reviewing my accounts, he pulled up my file and casually said someone had called last month asking about my home equity line. A woman, he said, claiming she was helping her father manage his finances. My coffee went cold in my hand. I told him I'd authorized no one. His smile faded as he added that she'd mentioned I was planning to grant her financial authority. I told him I'd never said that. He quickly offered to flag the account so no information could be released without my approval. I left the bank with my chest tight, realizing she wasn't just listening anymore, she was already acting. Monday morning, I called my insurance company to update my address, something I'd been meaning to do since Karen passed. The agent was polite and efficient, telling me my policy was in order and that the beneficiary change from a few months earlier was already processed. I froze mid-pour with the coffee pot in my hand and asked what change she meant. She explained that 4 months ago, the beneficiary had been changed from my estate to my daughter, Amanda Parker, and that they had a notarized form with my signature. I told her I had never signed anything. There was a long, heavy silence on the line before she said they had a witnessed, notarized document. It's forged, I said flatly, telling her I was reporting it as fraud. When I asked the policy amount and heard $250,000, I had to set the pot down before I dropped it. $250,000 in my daughter's name with a signature that wasn't mine. I told her I'd be speaking with the fraud department and filing a police report that day. By 2 that afternoon, I was back in Detective Alvarez's office. I slid the guardianship folder across his desk, then the insurance documents. He read slowly, his expression darkening with every page. That amount is a serious motive, he said quietly. I told him she'd forged my signature and had it notarized. He nodded, saying they'd subpoena the documents and identify the witness. Then he told me there was something else. He turned his computer screen toward me, showing a photo of a man I didn't recognize, dark-haired, confident in a way that immediately set me on edge. Derek Nash, 34. Alvarez clicked through records, explaining Derek had an arrest in Raleigh for financially exploiting an elderly victim, a previous girlfriend's grandfather. The charges were dropped after the man died and the family settled quietly. Alvarez looked at me and told me Derek was my daughter's boyfriend and that he'd done this before. I asked if he thought Derek was helping Amanda or if Amanda was helping Derek. Alvarez leaned back, studying me. "Does it matter?" he said. "Either way, they're coming for everything you have." I heard Derek's voice for the first time exactly 1 week after my birthday. I was sitting in my living room wearing the earbuds, pretending to watch the news, waiting. Through them, I heard a phone ring. Not mine. Amanda's. A man's voice came through, sharp and impatient, asking if I'd signed yet. Amanda sounded stressed as she said, "Not yet," that I was being careful. Derek snapped that they were running out of time, his voice smooth in that dangerous way. He talked about gambling debts and creditors who didn't care about excuses. Amanda said she was trying, that she'd given me the earbuds and planted the estate planning idea. He told her to try harder and reminded her she still owed him $30,000 from her failed business and maxed out cards. She started to cry, saying I was her father and she hated doing this. Derek showed no sympathy, saying I was old, alone, and sitting on money I didn't need. He laughed at the idea I might find out, saying old people didn't understand technology. He told her to keep pushing the guardianship plan. Get conservatorship, take control of the house, pension, insurance, clear her debts, split the rest. His voice softened as he asked if that wasn't what she wanted. After a long pause, she said yes. He told her to make it happen and to get me to the bank on Thursday to sign anything. The call ended. I sat there, the news still murmuring, my hands shaking as I removed the earbuds. She was being manipulated and threatened, buried under debt, tied to a man who saw my life as a paycheck. But she was still doing it. She'd given me the earbuds. She'd planted the doubts. She'd filed the papers. When I called Alvarez, my voice was steady. I told him I had everything they needed, a full audio recording of the conspiracy. Hearing him threaten her and hearing them plan everything together changed something in me. When I called Detective Alvarez, he stopped me immediately and told me not to do anything on my own, said he would coordinate with the bank and that they would set it up properly. He told me I'd done well and to stay calm. After I hung up, I stared at my phone for a long moment, then opened my messages and typed slowly and carefully. Amanda, honey, I've been thinking about those papers you mentioned. Let's meet at the bank Thursday morning and get everything sorted out. I think you're right. I could use some help managing things. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Really? That's wonderful, Dad. I'll set it up. Love you so much. I stared at the screen, noticing the 2 exclamation points and the heart emoji, then forwarded the recording to Alvarez and read her message again, struck by how excited she sounded, like it was a celebration. The conference room at First Union Bank on Thursday morning looked exactly like every other conference room I'd ever been in. Beige walls, bland furniture, meant to be forgotten. But what happened there stayed with me. Detective Alvarez and Rebecca Turner, the bank's fraud investigator, were already waiting when I arrived at 9:45, documents laid out neatly in front of them. Amanda walked in right at 10, wearing a navy blazer and carrying a leather folder, smiling brightly as she greeted me and asked if I was ready to get everything organized. Rebecca gestured for her to sit and said they had a few questions first. Amanda's smile wavered as she said she thought we were there to sign papers. Rebecca slid printed records across the table, pointing out calls made to the bank that Amanda had initiated. Amanda said she was helping her father at his request. Rebecca calmly replied that I had never authorized her to contact the bank. Amanda tightened her jaw and said I'd been confused lately, and that she was gathering information in case guardianship became necessary. Alvarez pushed the folder forward, the guardianship petition, with Amanda's handwritten notes. Her face drained of color as she asked where it came from. I spoke quietly, telling her I found it in my basement where she'd hidden it. Rebecca then played the recording, my own voice filling the room, staged confusion and planted doubts. Amanda tried to justify it, saying I was confused and that she was documenting things, until Rebecca placed the earbuds in the center of the table and said plainly that surveillance equipment had been hidden inside a birthday gift. Amanda jumped to her feet, her chair scraping loudly, insisting it was insane and begging me to tell them it was a misunderstanding. I told her to sit down, and something in my voice made her do it. Rebecca slid more documents forward, explaining that Amanda had forged my signature and changed my life insurance beneficiary, a policy worth $250,000. Amanda's hands shook as she said she hadn't meant to, that Derek had told her it would be fine, that he said I wanted it that way. Alvarez leaned in and named Derek Nash, reminding her of his criminal record for financially exploiting an elderly victim. That was when Amanda broke, words spilling out fast and desperate. She said she owed Derek $30,000, that her business had failed, that she had gambling debts, and that he told her this was the only way out. She reached for my hand, crying, calling me daddy, saying she was sorry and that Derek had manipulated her. I pulled my hand away, stood up, and walked toward the door as she begged me not to leave, her voice cracking as she reminded me she was still my daughter. I stopped, but didn't turn around and told her my daughter had died the day she decided I was worth more gone than alive. I walked out of the room, and behind me I heard Alvarez's voice steady and formal as he placed her under arrest. I walked through the bank lobby, out the glass doors, into the cold February sunlight that somehow felt heavier than winter. 2 hours later, Alvarez called to tell me they'd gone to Derek's apartment and found it empty, but that he'd made a mistake trying to board a flight to Mexico City with a fake passport. Airport security flagged him, and he was taken into custody. Both of them were arrested within hours of each other. I thought I would feel relief or justice, but instead, I sat alone in my car in the back parking lot feeling hollow. Behind me, my daughter was in handcuffs. Ahead of me, the rest of my life stretched out painfully quiet. I had won, but it didn't feel like winning. If you've stayed with my story this far, I need to know I'm not alone. Leave a comment and tell me you're there. Tell me where you're watching from, or just tell me you understand. It helps more than you know. Before I tell you what happened after that day, I need to say this first. Some of what comes next has been changed slightly to protect people's privacy, and a few details may not be exactly as they happened. If you'd rather stop here, I understand. But if you want to know how I'm doing now, 3 months later, stay with me just a little longer. 3 months later, the gavel came down at Nicole's sentencing, and I wasn't there to hear it. May brought warmer weather to Charlotte. Dogwoods bloomed, windows opened, and life kept moving the way it always does, no matter who is hurting. Romero called me with the results. Nicole received 18 months of probation, $50,000 in restitution to me, 500 hours of community service, and fraud and forgery convictions on her record. Derek received 5 years in federal prison for fraud, conspiracy, and violation of probation from a previous case. 2 weeks before sentencing, Nicole's lawyer had called and asked if I would write a letter to the judge, something about her character that might help reduce her sentence. I told him she made her choice, and I hung up. After that, I changed everything. Bank accounts, passwords, my will. I removed Nicole's name completely and left everything to a few charities Susan had cared about. I took out a new life insurance policy with beneficiaries who had never met me. I filed a restraining order. No contact, no calls, no letters. One afternoon in late May, Curtis stopped by. We sat on the back porch with iced tea, not saying much. That was Curtis's way. Silence didn't bother him. "You doing okay?" he finally asked. "Getting there," I said. He nodded. "What you did took guts." "Didn't feel like guts," I replied. "Felt like losing." He stayed another 20 minutes, then left, and I was alone again. That evening, I stood in the living room looking at the mantel. There was a photo I'd kept there for years. Nicole at 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, sitting on my shoulders at Freedom Park. Susan had taken it one Sunday afternoon, 6 months before she got sick. You could see Nicole's happiness in that picture, pure and uncomplicated. A note was stuck to the frame, written in crayon. "Best dad ever." People ask me if I miss her. That's the wrong question. I miss who she was, or who I thought she was. The daughter in that photo. That girl is gone. Maybe she never existed outside my own hopes. The woman in handcuffs at the bank, I don't know her. I set the photo back on the mantel. I didn't put it away, and I didn't keep staring at it. I just left it there, part of a past I couldn't change. I made dinner for one, watched the evening news, went to bed early. Lying there in the dark, I thought about trust, how it's built over decades, 32 years in Nicole's case, and how fast it can shatter. 10 days from a birthday gift to full betrayal. They say blood is thicker than water, but trust is fragile as glass. I don't use wireless earbuds anymore. The wired kind work fine. They're inconvenient, they tangle in your pocket, they yank out if you step wrong, but they're honest. They remind you that every connection has limits. At 63, I learned the hardest lesson of my life. Sometimes protecting yourself means losing what you wanted to protect the most. Maybe someday, years from now, when the wounds aren't so fresh, there could be something, some kind of reconciliation, some bridge back. But not today. Not for a long time. Today I lock my doors. I check my statements. I trust carefully. Today, I survive. If you're hearing this story, remember something. Pay attention. Ask questions. Don't be ashamed to protect yourself, especially from people who say, "Trust me." Because sometimes the greatest threat doesn't arrive with shouting or violence. Sometimes it comes wrapped in birthday paper, with a smile and a note that says, "Love, Nicole." I turned 64 this year. Nobody remembered, and this time I was grateful. So that's my true story. Not the kind you hear in feel-good grandparent stories where everything works out and families hug at the end. This is the real kind, the kind that leaves scars, the kind you don't hear often. Don't be like me. Don't wait until someone is listening through your walls to start asking questions. Don't trust blindly just because someone shares your blood. I did, and it nearly cost me everything. Here's what I learned, and I pray you listen. Pay attention to the small things. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Protect yourself, your money, your identity, your independence. Because the people who say, "Just trust me," are often the ones you should trust the least. I ask God every night why this happened. Maybe He's still teaching me something. Maybe He's teaching you, watching this story from wherever you are. There are plenty of grandparent stories about betrayal, family, and survival. Mine isn't special, but if it saves even one person from handing over their life wrapped in birthday paper, then maybe, just maybe, there was a reason for all of it. Stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous gift comes with "I love you" written on it.